Hey, everybody, buddy. I'm I'm at a loss for words right now. Obviously, as you can tell, um, obviously some situations. I was just got a call from my mom, but obviously, I'm here at my dad's place because of my grandma boss, who my mom just called. She just passed away, but I figured I wanted to try and do something to keep myself positive. So I am here with King of Swords, Mike. So thank you for joining me. But obviously, as you can tell, we are going to be talking about shape, shape of despair. Obviously, now I know you're not familiar with deep dives, King of Swords, so I will run through what this is all about. Obviously, in some cases, this is a kind of a group discography review, basically. And then at the obviously with some differences, obviously we talk about how we got into the band, talk about the history and stuff like that. And at the very end, we do a ranking, the worst to best. So there's only five from this band, and then final remarks and other stuff. So that's a quick rundown of all of that. So obviously, like I say, we're talking about Shape of Despair. So King of Swords, why don't you tell everyone how you got into Shape of Despair?
Hi Ryan. Yeah, welcome everybody. Yeah, I started to get into this band, I would say approximately 8 years ago. So I would have been in my early 30s at that time. So at that time I was just sort of wanting to get deeper into metal and explore other genres of metal. I had been into doom metal for quite a while at that time. I listened to a lot of like traditional doom and stoner doom and occult rock and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of want to go deeper and explore other styles of metal and doom metal. And so, yeah, Funeral Doom just seemed like the logical place to go. I had heard about Funeral Doom for some time, but I just really started to want to explore that particular style of metal. And so, yeah, I just started buying different albums from some of the more legendary Doom or Funeral Doom rather bands. And so, yeah, I just started purchasing all these different albums from a lot of the legendary Funeral Doom bands like Ahab and Evoken, uh, Skepticism, Esoteric, and Mournful Congregation. So these would have been some of the albums I would have purchased at that time, and some of those albums that would have got me into the genre. And of course, I got into this band also. I purchased this album at that time. This is Monotony Fields by Shape of Despair. And so yeah, I was just developing an interest in funeral doom, and of course, I discovered Shape of Despair at that time also, and just really enjoyed their music quite a bit. I remember listening to Monotony Fields quite a lot that time, and yeah, just got more into their music and just started purchasing some other albums of theirs, and yeah, just enjoy their music so much. Of course, there are lots of other great funeral doom bands also, like I mentioned, and yeah, so that's pretty much my entry into this band.
All right, thank you. Obviously these guys. I have no history because I'm just discovered these guys when we were trying to go through figuring out funeral doom bands. It was originally we were gonna have a third guy show, and he was in the first one, that be the Metal Tempest, but unfortunately he couldn't. He's kind of got a busy schedule, so hopefully for the next one he might be back. But as I was going through a lot of the bands, Ahab being one of them, just going through all the bands, including the ones you had mentioned, Evoking, Skepticism, Mortal Congregation. In the end, I think it was a good, mutual decision to go and pick these guys, and just went through some of them and just basically just do these guys because this was one that I know you wanted to talk about and stuff. So yeah, obviously, yes. So like I said, this is the first time I'm getting into these guys, whereas opposed to maybe something like a Belwish or Ahab, I have a little bit more history behind and such, and I'm just more of a fan of those bands. But yes, but now we're gonna get into basically a pretty long and winded history that I have written here for the band and everything that else that happens in between these albums. So we go with the beginning. And I wrote all of these are from Wikipedia. The band was founded in 1995 as Raven by Jarno Saloma, guitars, later also keyboards, Tommy Ulgren, bass, later also guitars, and Tony Atsomainsivu, drums, but also later also vocals, as a faster instrumental black metal influenced band, following the footsteps of their counterparts like Strid, Bertsum, Dark Throne, and Unholy. The trio soon realized that the music they played was not as good as they would have wanted, lacking the atmosphere and emotion of the bands that influenced them. During the summer of 1995, Raven recorded their rehearsals with a simple cassette recorder, capturing all the songs that later became the Alone in the Mist demo for the first time on tape. After listening to the rehearsal tape and realizing they actually had something in their hands they could stand behind, Raven wanted to record the tracks in a proper studio. It took the band 3 years to do it. Raven entered Archie Studio in early 1988. They still had not tried any vocals until the very last minute when they decided they wanted to test how the songs would sound with Main Cebu's vocals and were surprised how well they actually fit. The Alone in the Mist demo was not released until 2016 when the band thought it was the proper time to do it. So we ain't going to be talking about that demo. They changed their name in September 1998 to Shape of Despair. The decision to change the name came down to basically not wanting to be confused with the UK hard rock stalwarts Raven. They believed their new moniker fit their new sound better too. In 2000, they signed a deal with Spike Farmer Records and released their debut album in 2000. No date for it. With Samu Ratsalainen on the drums, Shades of. So, Mike, talk about Shades of ...
Yeah, their first album. Yeah, very legendary Funeral Doom album. Certainly one of the best. Yeah, definitely was a very groundbreaking album, not just for the band, but just for Funeral Doom in general. Very heavy, very atmospheric, lots of guttural vocals, just a very cold and otherworldly sounding album, very dark and dismal sounding, just haunting. Yeah, I really enjoy this one quite a bit myself personally. I know so many other fans of this band and just Funeral Doom in general consider this to be one of the best and most legendary albums within this genre.
Yeah, obviously, yes, because I can absolutely agree with you on this. But obviously, the harsh vocals when I was listening to this, I was getting, because I was listening to this because I was taking some notes for all of these. Um, I just went through and listening, obviously on this first release because they would be a lot different after this. Listening to this, it kind of, the vocals reminded me of like a combination of Chris Barnes and Inquisition vocals was what
Um,
I was kind of hearing a little bit of those guys. It was
hmm,
kind of weird because I think later
interesting.
albums were kind of much more deeper and such, especially on the next two after this one. But that's what I was hearing. I got notes on here. Track 1, In the Mist, which kind of I feel like could be a continuation of the title of the album title. I have here starts with I think a haunting and atmospheric flute sound before going into like, kind of was different at the time for me. It was listening to like, because I'm used to like the slow, like they would later get that slow kind of haunting doom, but here it was much more mid-paced. It kind of feels more kind of in the middle. It's not slow like you would know from Funeral Doom where it's like slow beats and stuff, but it's like more like a mid-paced riff. Obviously, like I said, the harsh vocals, and it has some female clean backing vocals behind this one. Then I think Wound here, basically, I think more of the same. with a beginning and end that has a very low male clean singing and some, I guess, obviously, because some of these are like relatively long. This is like 10 minutes. The other one was 13 minutes. Some very long instrumental parts at the beginning and end. And track, basically all of them just kind of sound, most of them sound the same. Um, Mid pace, songs like Shadow Dreams kind of sound pretty much the same, like track one in the mist. Down into the stream. Starts up with the, it kind of goes back and forth with the mid and kind of the slow methodical, that you would associate with Funeral Doom, and then the final track five, Sylvan Knight. Uh, this is the one that I heard on this that kind of sounds more like the traditional funeral doom metal sound on here. But overall, and I didn't realize who the vocalist was, and then I realized, oh, it's Dagon. That's who was the vocalist for Inquisition, was Dagon, because it reminded me Chris Barnes and Dagon a little bit. I've written here solid debut album that has sounds that can separate them from normal. Obviously, the mid pace thing, I thought this was really unique. I liked it a lot. Like having a more mid paced and heavy vocals that sound like Dagon trying to do death metal in some case. But I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. Thought it was a good album. What would you give it?
Interesting. I would actually give this a fairly good rating. Honestly, all their albums, in my opinion, are just fantastic. Some of them I do like more than others, but yeah, if I had to give this one a rating, I would give it at least a solid 9, potentially even more. Yeah, at least a 9, if not a 9.5.
Yep. Well, I mentioned their vocals. Like I said, I mentioned their vocals do change because Tony eventually leaves and is replaced by Posse Koskinen on the vocals, and this is where the vocals really do change. And we get
Yeah.
Angels of Distress. We got an actual release date on this one, September 25th of 2001, same label. So take it away, Mike.
Yeah, with this particular album, the production is definitely different from their first album. Definitely a bit different, I would say, from their first release. To me, this is what I would say is their most melancholic sounding album. It is just absolutely depressing sounding throughout. This album is just it's just miserable sounding. Of course, all their albums are dark sounding, but to me, this one is just especially melancholic sounding, and they really expanded on the vocals with this album. Of course, their first album had those female melodic vocals interplaying with the guttural vocals that on their first release, but with this album, to me, they really expanded on that one. You can really hear those female melodic vocals quite well, and the interplay between the gutturals is just fantastic. And but yeah, this I would say is similar to their first album, and you had just alluded to this, like all their all their songs on this release, like their first album, kind of sound the same. It's almost like the entire album is just one song separated into individual tracks. Like you can't really decipher one song from the next necessarily. To me, I can't necessarily. To me, they all have just a very similar mood going on. And but yeah, I really like this album so much. I prefer it a little bit more, I would say, than their first album. They really kind of changed their sound somewhat. And like I said, just very dark and just dreadful sounding. And yeah, I like this one quite a bit.
All right, yes. Well, I think obviously for me, just listening to this one, I have some obviously I got some notes. Track one, Fallen. Listening to this, I have it written down. It's like a funeral doom metal version of Metallica's To Live Is to Die, where it's mostly instrumental music with very little vocals and lyrics that show up in the end and has some chanting. I listened to that. I was like, yeah, I could kind of agree with that. It had been a while, but I was listening and I'm like, it reminded me of To Live Is to Die from Metallica off of And Justice for All. It reminded me so much. Then we get to Angels of Distress, which is the title track. while there are some traditional funeral doom sounds on this song feels like a leftover from the debut that was never used or something like that. I could be wrong, but it was on here and it could have been on the other one. Um, then we get to kind of some long tracks. Track 3, Quiet These Paintings Are. This is a combination of the first two, where there's more instrumental passages like Fallen and more lyrics slash vocals like the title track. Then we get to the longest song and the longest song they ever recorded, To Live for My Death. Basically a longer version of Fallen, where it's mostly instrumental with some vocals, but like I said, the vocals were so much more guttural. It's because it's a different guy, but I'm like, the vocals were kind of starting to take a hold or something. Maybe more later, more closer to the end, where it was like, holy shit, the vocals are a lot more guttural in this one, like big time. Then we get to, I believe, the last track, Night's Due, basically an instrumental track that musically is something that could easily fit onto their debut album that closes the song. Um, the, the overall for me, a good follow up to their debut album with some improvements and more traditional funeral doom metal sounds on most of the songs. And then this is where I read it. Harsh vocals also sound way more guttural and vicious than the vocals on the debut. Give it another 7.5. It is starting to get a little bit better. Each album does tend to get a little bit better for me. So, what do you give it, Mike?
Again, I love this album, so I'd probably give it at least a 9 or potentially even more, 9.5 possibly.
Yep. Yep. Well, after that, the other change was Tommy Ulgren tends to stick to the rhythm guitars, making room for the current bassist, Sammy Utsitalo, to join. And we get something that's a little bit different here. An album released on my birthday,
Hmm.
to be more specific, on September 27th of 2004 via Spike Farm Records, Illusions Play. Mike, what are your thoughts
Yeah,
on Illusions Play?
yeah, this one is definitely somewhat different from their first couple of albums. Production-wise, it's definitely different. There's definitely more keyboard elements here also. There's more like keyboard interludes, like some lengthy keyboard interludes throughout this album. Mood-wise, it's definitely a bit more varied. There are some different moods here that they are exploring. Definitely, yeah, somewhat different from their first couple of albums. Not my favorite album from them, that's for sure. I think it's a little bit, I suppose, boring at times. I do enjoy this album quite a bit, mind you. It's very well written and well produced, but I just think some of the elements to me are just yeah, just aren't terribly entertaining. A bit too drawn out, I think, sometimes with the keyboard elements, but still overall pretty good album. I just feel like it's just not as strong as their first couple of albums.
Well, what rating would you give this one?
Yeah, I would give it a little bit lower, probably about a 7 or a 7.5.
Yep. Well, yep. I would now to start talking about this was kind of literally a first talking about an album that was on my birthday, but I had no idea this came out when I was turning 14 years old. Not until much recently did I know about these guys. But yep, we start off with Sleep Mirrored. Kind of just continuing just kind of continuation of their last instrumental track, Night's Due, off of Angels of Distress. Then we get to Still Motion, second longest song the band has ever recorded slash released. Essentially, yes, you kind of do say the drawn out. This is definitely one that I have written. Essentially a very long and drawn out funeral doom metal sounding song. This is where I feel like they started really getting into the funeral doom, entwined in misery, full blown, just full blown funeral doom metal sounding song. Curse Life, more of the same, but it has a very haunting acoustic guitar sounding intro on this one. Then we get to Fragile Emptiness, a slow, kind of slow to mid-paced sounding song, with it being predominantly be more mid-paced than slow. Then we get close the album out with the title track, Illusions Play. Very similar to Sleep Mirrored and Still Motion, that could theoretically be in between both songs, and I had those written down. Basically, Funeral Doom and such, obviously feels like a continuation of those. I think for me, this is definitely an overall improvement of their first two for me. At least at the current moment, making this their best album so far. I give it a 7.75 out of 10. And that's probably kind of a rate I'm going to give a lot of their albums. But obviously, we got in between this, it's a very long gap in between this one, because that was 2004. This is 2015, so it's an 11-year gap. They put out a self-titled compilation, which would be their last release on Spike Farm Records, a 2-song EP called Written in My Scars, which I think both songs end up being on this next one. On Solar Fall Records, and they split with Before the Rain on Avant-Garde Music before signing with their current label, Season of Mist. Also, Posse leaves and is replaced by the current vocalist, Henry Koivula, and we get Monotony Fields, released on June 15th of 2015, obviously via Season of Mist. So, Mike,
Yeah,
talk about this.
so for me, this album is phenomenal. This is definitely a big change for this band. They, of course, had been on quite a lengthy hiatus. I think they when it was about 11 years, I believe, since Illusions Play. They did release that EP, of course, in that compilation between them, but yeah, it's quite a while to release a full-length album. But of course, they did have some changes within the band. They got a new vocalist at this time, and yes, so definitely a different sound here. Production-wise, to me, it's definitely better. Definitely more varied in the moods. Yeah, I just love the instrumentation here, the sound of the guitar and the drums, and so many great songs here also. It's pretty melodic at times, but still very heavy and dark. With this album especially, you can start to hear how each song has more of an identity as opposed to their earlier albums, to me, which is kind of sounded the same somewhat. To me, with this particular album here, this is where they really start to almost have each song have its own sort of unique identity and almost have like some more kind of catchy type elements here. Like I said, certainly more melodic, and the vocals are just fantastic here. The guttural vocals as well as the female melodic vocals. This album is just phenomenal. I really, really do enjoy this one so much. If I had to rate it out of 10, probably would give it a 10.
Yeah. Very interesting, because I feel like I think for the most part, we've had kind of difference in opinions in some of this, and it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I feel like this one, because this was, I think, their longest album, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like, but it has about 8 songs on this one. So it's like, I feel like in some ways it is the longest one. But man, it was kind of getting, because these next two were kind of the more recent ones I was listening to recently in preparation for this. So we start off with Reaching the Innermost. Starts with an orchestral sound for about 2 minutes before going into the sound that for me they've been kind of having for the previous 2 albums. Then we get another one. This one, it's more of like kind of feel like the same, but there is some more identity. This has kind of got a beautifully haunting guitar harmony near the end, because it was like, whoa, that's kind of interesting. I might write that down on this one. Then that's the title track, Descending Inner Night. But this one has more of like, unlike, I think I can't recall if any of the other ones have some great clean singing. But there's some great clean singing on this one that's in the back half of the song, and I was like, ooh, this is really cool. And I think it's the new vocalist, the new guy who came in. Who would that be? Henry. Really great clean singing. Then we get the distant dream of life. Um, Kind of back to what they were doing, like pace, like they were doing early on. But it's more like the previous song. It's more like track 3, but shorter. Then we get track 5, Withdrawn. Identical to the first songs, with chanting near the beginning and ending of the song, and a sorrowful guitar harmony near the end of the song. Track 6, in Longing, a combination of the orchestra song from the first song, the clean singing from the third and fourth song, and the chanting from the fifth song near the end, with the long and drawn out song from the funeral doom sound, pretty much. Um, the Blank Journey, I believe. Um, Longest song on the album. Other than that, it's just the previous song, but longer. And then we get the final song, Written in My Scar. Scar, I think this one is no, not title track. This was the one that was on the EP, I believe. Leave. Well, but overall, very much like track 5, but with the chanting being more like a clean singing chant than a background chant. Chant. I have this being a little bit lower, uh, right below. It's kind of the same rating as Illusions Play, but I think Illusions Play, I think for me, is a little bit better. But it's pretty much the same rating as it. It's a good album. Obviously, as you can tell, I'm not really, at this point it was starting to get a little bit along, and this was where I feel like it was. I think for me, this album was starting to wane and was starting to get drawn out for me, and it was just like, okay, I want to get these over with and stuff like that for me. But yeah, 7.75 out of 10 for me with this one. And then we get kind of another long break. Samu leaves, but he does come back, and they release the demo they released as Raven. Obviously, this was when they released that. But like I said, Samu comes back in 2020, obviously during the pandemic, and in February 25th, 2022. So this is about almost 3 years from now. We get Return to the Void. So, Mike, thoughts on Return to the Void?
I absolutely love this album so much. Great release right here. I love that cover also. Really nice
Yeah.
painted cover. Yeah, so this is their most recent album, came out about 3 years ago. I did, in fact, put this album on my top albums of 2022 list. That's how much I loved it and still love it. Just love the atmosphere in this album. It just has that cold, wintry atmosphere. This is somewhat similar, I suppose, in some ways to Monotony Fields. Some similar melodies going on here, similar vocal styles here also. But yeah, I just really enjoy the mood so much in this one. It just has this sort of calming effect, even though it's just so heavy and dark. I can just sit back and just almost relax and go into this sort of meditative state and just enjoy this album. It just has that sort of effect. Yeah, I really like this one so much. Love the production, the instrumentation, the vocals, of course. Again, similar to Monotony Feels, like each song has its own identity and almost has like some sort of catchiness to it. There's definitely some melodic parts that just sort of stick and are just so catchy and memorable. Yeah, I really do enjoy this album so much. I definitely have more of a preference for their more recent albums like Monotony Fields and this one, obviously. So yeah, I definitely enjoy their more later albums. And so yeah, if I had to rate this one, again, I'd probably give it like a 9.75, even potentially a 10.
Yeah, obviously, I think for me at the current moment, with this being their last one, this one to me is probably their best. There is some similar sounds from the last one because it's continuation of that sound. It's a lot more shorter than the last one. It's about 6 tracks on this one. We start with the title track. Basically kind of a continuation of the song of the last song from on the previous album, that being Written in My Scars. And then we get Disillusion, kind of the same, but with a chanting clean scene being more at the front forefront on this one. This one, I think this was one where I feel like it was more at the front. I think it was more apparent on this one than the harsh vocal on this one. Then we get Solitary Downfall. Uh, Pretty much like the previous two, but longer, longer. Feel like it does have the clean chanting singing at the front again. Reflection in Slow Time, pretty much the same as before, but with some some female led clean singing on this one and chanting too. They're female singing on this one. It took about 5 albums or something like that, but finally get some female singing. It was really, really good. And I think this is why I put this over, because these last 3 tracks on this one were so great. Forfeit, a mix of obviously orchestral chanting and the funeral doom sound. There's even some screaming on this one. I was like, oh shit, there's some screaming on this one. Hell yeah. And then the album closes with The Inner Desolation. Pretty much everything that's been heard on this album, from the funeral doom to chanting, sounds just a little bit longer at almost 12 minutes in length. But overall, I had it just because of the back half alone of this. I do have it a smidge better. I could almost probably argue I could possibly give this one an 8 out of 10. I originally had it at the same rating, but I do think maybe it's really close to an 8 for me. To an 8 for me. So I might as well just give this one an 8. But yeah, now it is on to the ranking, I guess you could say. So Mike,
All
what's
right.
your number 5?
Yeah, okay. So from my least favorite to my most favorite, and like we said, there's of course 5 albums, 5 full-length albums from this band. So
Yep.
at my number 5 is Illusions Play. Of course, I had
Oh,
mentioned that I wasn't overly fond of this album. I still enjoy it, but it's definitely my album, or definitely the album from this band that I listen to the least. Like I said, to me, it's just kind of drawn out and not particularly exciting at times, but still very, very good. But yeah, just my least favorite from this band. So at number 5 is Illusions Play.
all right. My number 5 is their debut, Shades of.
Okay.
I really like this one a lot, but it's like, it's like just anything else was just like, it was, I wish I could rank it higher, but it's currently my number 5. So you're number
Mhm.
4.
Okay, my number 4 is Shades of. Yeah, so this is their debut album. I really do enjoy this one so much. I don't necessarily like putting it this low in the list, but I sort of have to, right? Something's got to go this low, right? But yeah, this is a great
Yeah.
debut album from this band. Such a legendary Funeral Doom album as well. I know so many people love this album. Yeah, just I really enjoy the production on here. It's just so thick and heavy and hazy and dark sounding, just absolutely desolate and cold sounding. It's just amazing that this band was able to capture those emotions on this, and vocals, of course, those gutturals are just overwhelming. Like they're just so intense, and the keyboard elements, it's just so haunting sounding. I do enjoy this one so much, but yeah, it is my number 4. So at number 4 it's Shades of.
Yep. All right. My number 4 is Angels of Distress. It is, for me, it was starting to get better on this one. You know, I do like that one. So my number 4 is Angels of Distress. So you're number 3.
Yeah, my number 3 is Angels of Distress. So yeah, I really enjoy this one quite a bit. It's definitely, like I said, different from their first album. Like I said, it's just so dark but melancholic sounding. Like it's just so depressive sounding. All their albums, of course, are depressive sounding, but this one, there's just a certain melancholy to it. And yeah, I just love the vocals, especially on this release. The female vocals I really enjoy so much, and love like I said, I think I had mentioned the production. Yeah, the production is so good, and yeah, great release here, but yeah, definitely my number 3. So at number 3 is Angels of Distress.
Yep. Yep. My number 3 is Monotony Fields, their return album. I just, it's kind of not much else I could probably say about that one. I really did enjoy it, but it was starting to at this point a little bit wane, but I do still think it's better than their first two. So yeah, my number 3 is Monotony Fields.
Yeah.
Your number 3, Mike.
Oh no, would be my number two now.
Oh yeah, you're number 2. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're number 2.
So
I bet.
yeah, yeah. Number two would be Return to the Void. Of course, this
Oh
this is
wow.
their most recent album. I listened to this album quite a lot back during 2022. Of course, like I said, I put this on my albums of the year list back then. This one I really enjoy the atmosphere on. It just, like I said, it has that really cold, wintry atmosphere. Yeah, I really enjoy the mood so much on this one. There's just something really unique about this album. I just love it so much. And like I said, I definitely have more of a preference for their later albums because their style definitely changed, and I definitely like that change in style. Even though I do like their earlier albums, but I just really like their later albums more so. And this one is fantastic. Okay, so number two is Return to the Void.
Yep, my number 2 is Illusions Play. Really preferred this over Angels of Distress. The vocals are a lot better on this one, but it's probably the same guy. I just kind of like how the guys, Posse's, harsh vocals are. They're just really good. And this is probably the best of his, the growls he has. They're just so, just so menacing, guttural, and just like, they're just so good. Good. Like we got Logan up here. What's up, Logan? But yeah, and obviously I kind of have a bias because this was released on my birthday, so
Yeah.
it's not my best. So that's my number 2. What is your number 1, Mike?
My number one is Monotony Fields. Amazing, amazing album right here. Yeah, definitely different from their first three releases. To me, it's definitely stronger in their first three releases, even though those first three releases are amazing. But yeah, their style definitely changed somewhat. And like I said, there's more melody here. I would say there's more memorable qualities here. The production is different. Definitely like the production quite a bit here. The instrumentation, the guitar riffs, and all that. And yeah, to me, this is just such a strong release. It's just very consistent album throughout. And yeah, what more can I say? Absolute masterpiece in my opinion. Love this one so much. This is my number one, Monotony Fields.
Yep. Well, I think my number 1, because of those last back half of the album, my number 1 is Return to the Void, just from listening to those, from the female clean singing, the screams on Forfeit, just, those screams were just like very like black metal screams a little bit. They have that kind of that scream, just like very just, I can't figure out the words, but it was just like that black metal screeching black metal screams. It was just so freaking good and stuff like that. So yeah, my number 1 is Return to the Void. So Mike, any closing thoughts on this band? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, to me, in my opinion, this is easily one of the best funeral doom bands out there. There are, of course, so many other great funeral doom bands, but I think if you're going to get into the genre, if you're considering getting into funeral doom, definitely check out this band amongst many other funeral doom bands. But yeah, I think this has got to be, in my opinion, like the gold standard for funeral doom. I really do enjoy this band so much, and yeah, I definitely think you should check this band out if you haven't already. And yeah, excellent stuff.
Yeah. Well, for me, this was one of those that was kind of, it did start to, I will be honest, it's like I was kind of glad I enjoyed this doing this with you, but this feels like it's one of those, because I kind of like wanting to, hopefully some of the other ones, because this one was kind of a little bit more, I guess for me was a little bit, aside from maybe I might maybe I'll listen to maybe some of the early stuff, because I kind of like that debut. The debut was kind of unique and kind of made him stand out a little bit within Funeral Doom. I mean, yeah, they do have Funeral Doom, but it's just like as the albums kind of did progress, as I was listening to them, I was, it was starting to feel a little bit drawn out for me. me. And, it's just like, this is one of those, aside from maybe the debut Shades of, I think a lot of these other ones are like, listen to it once and probably maybe come back to it every so often, but not anytime soon. Maybe there's something, maybe the back half of Return to the Void I'll come back to more often. Obviously, Shades of, I definitely want to come back to. Maybe those first 3 albums I might definitely come back to, because I did kind of like the Posse's growls. They were really great. But I feel like they are kind of an acquired taste. Some people will end up liking it. Some people are going to probably be one of those that's like, listen to a few of the tracks, maybe an album or two, but it's like they'll never come back to these guys, a band like this again, or just may never go back to them again ever. I feel like I put myself in that middle one where, like, I mentioned a few albums, but I think overall, they're good. It's just probably in some case, the rest is just not my cup of tea when it comes to funeral doom bands. I have freaking Bell Witch, Mirror Reaper, and freaking the Clandestine Gate. I have Ahab's the Coral Tune, but it's just, this is one of those bands that I probably might not come back to. So yeah, so you got anything planned?
Me, on my YouTube channel, yeah, I have quite a few videos planned this year. I'm going to be doing lots of album ranking videos. I'm going to be doing lots of guitar videos as well, me playing guitar and doing various riffs. That's something I've been enjoying doing, and working on my new album as well. That's coming along slowly but surely, but the songs I'm writing so far just are really good. But yeah, I got lots of videos planned for this year. Like I said, lots of album ranking videos. I'm going to be doing an Ahab albums rank video coming up. I'm going to be doing a bunch of
Nice.
black metal bands like Austere, Celestia, Nagelfar, Dimmu Borgir, Satyricon. So those will definitely be coming up later this year, as well as some other album ranking videos like Metallica. I'll finally be doing them, and so looking forward to that. And yeah, I have quite a bit planned, and I'm just yeah, just keep working at it.
Yep. And I think for everyone on my channel, obviously, I got it in a couple weeks. I got Dream Theater coming up. Obviously, me and him, we were talking before all of this got started, mentioning about maybe doing something new metal
Yeah.
related. So, mentioned obviously Mudvayne, System of a Down. I know you mentioned Cole. We haven't figured out the 5th and final one yet. I know you had another one that you probably picked. I can't
Yeah.
remember what it was.
I'll text you afterwards. There's a few that I have in mind now.
Yep. But obviously I do think when it comes to Funeral Doom, there will be another one. You mentioned Ahab. You probably might be a part of that one as well.
Yeah.
But I know hopefully for that one we might have Metal Tempest. And I think after Dream Theater, I think I got Black Sabbath Part 2, and then I got kind of a mini deep dive at the end of that month, which is more so a solo one. And then I think April. Obviously I'll be having the tournament thing where I'll determine who's going to get the 2-part deep dive for April. But I think after that, it's just figuring out the scheduling for that. So King of Swords Mike, I thank you for coming.
Yeah, you're
To
welcome.
some and to those who came in, obviously we have John in here. Then we got Logan. He's about to do Faith No More in about 15 minutes. So I might be over there in his chat watching them talk about Faith No More, as well as I think later on. Shout out to Logan here. He's got that. And then obviously Jeff from Gas Masks and Hand Grenades. He's going to be doing Kate Bush in a couple of hours, or less than an hour, a little over an hour. But yep. Thank y'all for tuning in. So hopefully see you in 2 weeks for Dream Theater. So yep. We'll see
Yeah.
y'all later.
Yeah.
And
Take care.
as always, keep things metal.